They were twins, bound by blood, torn by betrayal. When Amara caught her twin sister kissing her fiancé, she erased her from her life forever. 10 years later, her sister dies, but leaves behind a letter that changes everything. Now, a secret child, a haunting truth, and a mirror that won't stop reflecting regret. Will forgiveness come too late, or will love find its way through the pain? Watch till the end. You won't believe how it ends. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to Folktales by Noble for more heart-pounding African thrillers. The story of Amara and Adana began long before heartbreak found them. They were twins, mirror images of each other, yet painted with different shades of spirit. As little girls growing up in Enugu, they shared everything: food, secrets, laughter, even dreams. When one cried, the other's eyes welled up. When one laughed, the other followed without knowing why. Their mother, Mama Okafor, used to say with pride, "God made one heart and split it in two." But the same bond that made them inseparable as children became the very thing that tore them apart as women. Amara, the elder by 5 minutes, grew into a woman of grace and structure. She believed life had to be planned, measured, and mastered. Every book on her shelf was alphabetized, every dream carefully pursued. Adana, on the other hand, lived in color. She wore her laughter like perfume, loud and unforgettable. She danced barefoot in the rain, fell in love too quickly, forgave too easily. She was the kind of woman who believed that life should be felt, not managed. For years, their differences complemented each other like day and night, sharing the same sky, until Tunde Martins walked into their world. Amara met him first. She was 28, a rising interior designer in Lagos. Tunde was a real estate developer, tall, well-spoken, always smelling of mint and ambition. He had a confidence that felt contagious and a charm that seemed custom-made for every woman in the room. Their connection was instant. Within months, he proposed. And for the first time, Amara felt she had found someone who saw beyond her guarded layers. When she brought him home for the first time, Mama Okafor's joy filled the compound. Pots clattered, stew simmered, and neighbors peeked through windows to greet the husband-to-be. But no one glowed brighter that evening than Adana. "Ah, Tunde, you must be the man who finally tamed my sister," she teased as she shook his hand. Her laughter rang out like wind chimes. Tunde grinned. "I wouldn't say tamed, more like she's the general, and I just follow orders." Everyone laughed, everyone but Amara, who smiled faintly, watching the way his eyes lingered on Adana a second too long. She brushed it off. After all, her sister was naturally warm, naturally engaging. That was Adana, sunshine personified. In the weeks that followed, the three became an inseparable trio. Adana helped Amara choose fabric colors for the wedding, accompanied her to fittings, even planned the surprise proposal video for social media. Sometimes, when Amara was buried in design work, she would call Adana, "Please go pick Tunde up at the airport." He just returned from Abuja. Adana never refused. She always said, "No wahala, I'll handle it." But something began to shift. At first, it was subtle. Tunde's laughter around Adana lingered longer. He began to tease her playfully, sharing inside jokes that Amara didn't understand. During dinner at Mama Okafor's, Amara would notice Adana's hand brushing his arm when passing the stew, or their eyes meeting in a silence too intimate to ignore. Once, Amara caught them sitting on the veranda, their heads close, talking softly. When she approached, they both jumped, pretending nothing was amiss. That night she lay awake staring at the ceiling. No, not Adana. She wouldn't, she couldn't. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew in the dark corners of her mind. One Friday evening it happened. Amara was supposed to be in Abuja for a client presentation. The trip got canceled at the last minute, and she decided to surprise Tunda instead. She wanted to cook him dinner, just the two of them, something she hadn't done in weeks. The night was warm. The moon hung over Lagos like a dim lantern as her car pulled into his compound. She hummed softly, carrying a bag of groceries and a heart full of forgiveness for the distance she had felt lately. But as she approached the veranda, her steps slowed. There they were, Adana, Tunde, under the golden wash of the veranda light. His hands cupped her face. Her eyes were closed, their lips locked in a kiss that shattered Amara's soul into 1,000 unfixable pieces. The bag fell from her hands. Tomatoes rolled across the tiles. The sound of their laughter died instantly. Tunda froze. Adana turned, her eyes wide with horror. Amara! Silence stretched, thick, violent, unbearable. Tunda stepped forward, his voice trembling. It's not what you think." But Amara's glare stopped him mid-sentence. She looked at her twin, her mirror, and all she saw was betrayal wearing her own face. "Adana," she whispered, voice cracking. "How could you?" Tears streamed down Adana's cheeks. She reached out, desperate. "Amara, please. It wasn't what it looked like. I swear it's not." Amara stepped back. "Don't!" Her voice broke into something cold and foreign. "Get out of my life, Adana. Both of you." That night, thunder rolled across Lagos. Rain pounded the earth like grief. Amara sat alone in her room, replaying every moment of their childhood, every shared laugh, every birthday, every promise. "I'll always protect you," Adana once said when they were little. But in one kiss, that promise dissolved. Tunda tried to call. She blocked him. He sent messages. She deleted them. Adana came to the house the next morning, barefoot, hair wet from the rain, pounding on the gate, crying her sister's name. "Amara, please, just let me explain." But Amara never opened the door. She sat by the window, watching her twin through the curtains, fists pressed to her mouth to silence her sobs. When Mama Okafor arrived, Adana was still kneeling by the gate, soaked and shaking. Mama Okafor cried as she held her, "My daughters, why are you doing this to each other?" But Amara's voice was ice. "Blood means nothing when trust is gone." Days turned into weeks. The wedding was officially called off. Tunde left Lagos soon after, too ashamed or perhaps too guilty to stay. Adana retreated to Ibadan to teach at a local school, sending letters that Amara never read. Mama Okafor tried everything, fasting, prayers, even tricking them into attending family gatherings together, but Amara always left before Adana arrived. Her silence became her weapon, her pride, her armor. Inside, though, she was crumbling. She would wake at night to the echo of their laughter, the way Adana used to hum when she braided her hair, the way they used to fall asleep back to back as children. Sometimes she'd catch her reflection in a mirror and flinch, thinking she saw Adana, the same eyes, the same mouth, the same pain. But she'd quickly look away. A year later, Amara moved to Abuja, determined to start over. She told herself she didn't need family, didn't need memories, didn't need love. Her business grew. Clients admired her discipline, her professionalism, but no one saw the loneliness eating her alive. Her mother called every week, always ending the call the same way. "Please, my daughter, forgive your sister." And every time Amara would hang up before answering, she told herself she was over it. That betrayal should never be rewarded with forgiveness. But some nights, she'd stare at her phone, scroll to Adana's number, still memorized after all those years, and stop. Her thumb would hover over call. Then she'd lock the phone and whisper, "No." She chose her path. 3 years passed, then 5, then 7. Each year, Mama Okafor would send photos, Adana smiling at family events, new hairstyles, new students, new beginnings. Amara deleted them without opening, yet deep down, every image left a bruise on her heart, because the truth was simple. You can cut your twin out of your life, but not out of your soul. One night, while visiting home briefly, Mama Okafor cornered her in the kitchen. Her eyes were tired, her voice trembling. "Amara, how long will this continue? Do you think pain disappears when you bury it? That girl cries for you every Christmas, every birthday." Amara's jaw tightened. "I don't care, Mama. She should have thought of that before kissing my fiancé, Mama sighed deeply. "You saw a moment. You never asked for the truth. You never listened. You just judged." Amara turned away, her voice sharp. "There's nothing left to listen to." But even as she said it, her chest ached, because somewhere, in a quiet corner of her heart, the little girl inside her, the one who once shared laughter and secrets with her twin, was whispering, "What if you're wrong?" That night, Amara stood before the mirror. The power was out. Only candlelight flickered in the dark room. Her reflection stared back, and for a moment she didn't see herself. She saw Adana, the same eyes, the same lips. She whispered, "You took everything from me." And in that reflection, the candle flame flickered like a heartbeat, fragile, trembling, as if the shadow in the glass wanted to speak. Amara blew out the candle and sat in darkness, her pride her only companion. But in the silence that followed, she realized something chilling. The sound of her heartbeat and Adana's laughter in her memory were the same rhythm, and no matter how far she ran, she could never truly escape the sound of her own twin. That was the curse of blood, and the beginning of her lifelong regret. At first, Amara threw herself into work. She registered Amara Interiors, starting with small design projects for friends and acquaintances. Within 3 years, her company became the most sought after in the city. Her name appeared in lifestyle magazines. Her designs featured in glossy spreads titled "The Minimalist Queen of Abuja." She smiled in photos. Perfectly. But behind the polished grin, her soul was hollow. Because every success she celebrated, every award she received, came with one bitter truth. There was no one to share it with, no twin to call, no laughter to echo hers. Her mansion stood on the outskirts of Maitama, elegant, modern, silent, too silent. The marble floors reflected her footsteps, and the mirrors reflected her guilt. Every time she walked past one, she saw Adana, the same eyes, the same lips, the same face she could never forgive. Sometimes she would pause and whisper to her reflection, "You don't exist to me anymore." But the reflection never listened. Years rolled by, and life went on, at least on the outside. Her company expanded to Port Harcourt and Lagos. Clients admired her taste and discipline, calling her the woman with eyes of glass. Beautiful, but cold. At 34, she received an award for Top 10 Women Entrepreneurs in Nigeria. She smiled on stage, the applause washing over her like meaningless rain. That night, when she returned home, she poured herself a glass of wine and stared at her phone. Adana's birthday. She typed a message. "Happy birthday, Adana. I hope life is kind to you." Then her thumb hovered over send. Seconds passed. Minutes. She deleted it. Pride won again. Mama Okafor, growing older and weaker, refused to let the bond die. She called both daughters every week, her voice trembling with hope. "Amara, please. Your sister still writes. She still prays for you. You're her other half, my child. Do not let bitterness steal your soul." But Amara would only say, "Mama, stop." I don't want to hear her name. Then she would hang up. Every time Mama Okafor sat in her small living room, tears sliding down her wrinkled cheeks, whispering prayers for her daughters to find each other again before she left this world. On the other side of that silence, Adana lived in Ibadan. Her life was modest, but filled with warmth. She worked as a literature teacher at St. Bridget's Secondary School. Her students adored her. She taught them not just about books, but about life, about forgiveness, about courage, about love. When her students misbehaved, she smiled and said softly, "Learn to be kind. Pride builds walls, but kindness builds bridges." They never knew she was speaking to herself. Adana never stopped writing letters to Amara. Once a month, she sat by her small window, lit a candle, and wrote long, heartfelt letters filled with memories and apologies. "Dear Amara, I know you hate me, but I still believe one day you'll read this. I still believe the same God who made us twins will bring us back together. Until then, I'll keep writing. I'll keep loving you, even if from afar she never got a reply." But she never stopped writing. And with each passing year, Mama Okafor's health declined. The doctor said it was hypertension, but everyone in the neighborhood knew the truth. She was dying from heartbreak. She had 2 daughters, yet she lived as if she had none. Every Christmas, she begged them both to come home. Adana came. Amara didn't. At first, she gave excuses. "Work is busy. I can't travel. Maybe next year." But deep down, she just couldn't face the ghost of what once was. Each Christmas night, Mama Okafor would sit on the veranda between 2 empty chairs and cry softly. She kept telling her neighbors, "One day they will come home together." You'll see, then came the morning that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in July. Amara was in her office, finalizing designs for a client's mansion, when her phone rang. The screen flashed Mama. She smiled faintly. She always picked her mother's calls, even when she avoided her words. "Mama, good morning. I'm just in a meeting. Can I—" But the voice on the other end wasn't the usual calm one. It was trembling, broken. "Amara." The silence that followed was heavy. "Mama? What's wrong?" A long pause. Then, through tears, her mother whispered the words that would echo in Amara's soul forever. "Amara, Adana is gone." The world stopped. For a moment, all she could hear was the hum of the air conditioner and her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" There was an accident. On the Lagos-Ibadan expressway. They said she didn't make it. Amara's hand trembled. Her knees gave way. The phone slipped from her grasp and hit the marble floor with a thud that sounded like finality. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she stood, walked to a window, and stared at the city she had built her life around. Glittering, loud, full of everything except peace. And all she could whisper was, "No, not like this." That night, Mama called again. "My daughter, the burial will be on Saturday." Please come home. Please, for me." But Amara sat in silence, staring at the reflection of her twin in the glass window. Her voice was cold. "She made her choices, Mama." "Amara." The line went dead. Saturday came, and while the Okafor family compound filled with mourners, songs, and tears, Amara sat alone in her Abuja mansion, staring at the invitation card lying unopened on her table. Rain drizzled outside. She turned off her phone to silence the world, but no matter how far she ran from grief, it found her. Every drop of rain that hit her window sounded like her sister's voice calling her name. Every flash of lightning brought back the image of that night 10 years ago. The kiss, the betrayal, the silence that followed. Only now she realized something cruel. That silence had buried them both long before the car crash. At midnight, she walked to her mirror, the one in her bedroom that stood taller than her, and looked at herself. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, her hair disheveled. But what unsettled her most was not the tiredness in her face. It was the familiarity. She saw Adana there, not in imagination, but in essence, the same lines, the same curve of the lips. And for the first time in 10 years, her walls cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered at the reflection. "Why didn't you fight harder to explain?" Her voice broke. "Why did you leave me like this?" But the reflection only stared back, silent, and Amara realized she wasn't angry anymore. She was empty. The following week, Mama Okafor arrived in Abuja unannounced. She wore a faded wrapper and old slippers, her face swollen and red from days of crying. When Amara opened the door, her mother's sorrow hit her like a physical blow. Mama Okafor stepped inside without a word, sank into the nearest chair, and buried her face in her hands. Her voice came out muffled, breaking with each word. "Amara, why didn't you come to her funeral? She was your sister, your twin, and you weren't there." Amara stood frozen, guilt and shame tightening around her chest. She wanted to speak, to explain, but no words came. Her mother's sobs filled the room, echoing through the walls and shaking something deep within Amara. All she could do was watch as the woman who had carried both their lives wept for the daughter she had lost, and for the one who had abandoned her. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. The walls seemed to whisper. The silence seemed to breathe. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adana standing by the roadside, the rain pouring, her lips forming the words, "I'm sorry." And when she woke, she felt something she hadn't felt in 10 years. Regret. It came slowly, quietly, like dawn light seeping under a closed door. For days, she went through life like a ghost. Her employees noticed she was distracted, quieter than usual. She forgot meetings, missed calls, and sometimes just sat in her office, staring at nothing. In her dreams, she saw 2 little girls, herself and Adana, running barefoot through the childhood yard, holding hands. Then the dream always ended the same way. Adana turned to look back, smiling, and disappeared into fog. One evening, unable to bear it any longer, Amara drove to the church near her home. The building was empty, lit only by candlelight. She knelt at the altar and whispered, "God, if she could hear me just once more, I would say I'm sorry. I would say I miss her." Her tears fell freely, staining the marble floor. For the first time in a decade she cried, not from anger, but from loss. And in the silence that followed, she thought she heard a voice, faint and familiar. "I never stopped loving you." That night, Amara stood by her window again. The city lights flickered far below, And in her reflection, Adana's face seemed to blend with hers, two halves finally aware of the distance they had created and the love they had both lost trying to protect their pride. Amara pressed her hand against the glass, whispering, "I'm sorry, sister." The glass fogged under her breath as if the reflection breathed with her, and for a fleeting moment she felt it, not forgiveness, not peace, but the fragile beginning of both. The air in Adana's old room was thick, not just with dust, but with memory. The faint smell of rose lotion still lingered, clinging stubbornly to the curtains that hadn't been drawn since her death. It was the same lotion Adana had used since she was a teenager. Even now, the scent clawed at Amara's chest, pulling at a thread she thought she had long buried. Mama Okafor stood by the doorway, her face aged and worn. Her eyes pleaded, but she said nothing. For years, she had begged Amara to forgive her twin, to pick up the phone, to answer one of the countless letters Adana had sent. But Amara had built walls too high for love, or grief, to climb. Now, silence stretched between mother and daughter like a ghost. Amara stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath her heels. Her reflection caught in the mirror by the corner. For a brief moment, she saw not herself, but Adana. The same sharp cheekbones, the same lips, the same eyes that once looked at her with both mischief and devotion. She turned away quickly. Her fingers brushed over the surface of Adana's study table, neat as if she had just left for work and would return at any moment. There were books, stacks of notebooks filled with tiny handwriting, lesson plans from her teaching job, and in the middle of it all, a small, faded photo frame. Amara picked it up. It was an old photo of the two of them, maybe aged 10 or 11. They were standing barefoot on red earth, their hands tightly clasped, their faces smeared with birthday cake. She remembered that day vividly. The laughter, the shared whispers, the way Adana had promised, "We'll never fight, no matter what." Amara's throat tightened. She set the frame down carefully, afraid even her breath might shatter it. "Take your time," Mama Okafor whispered from the doorway. Her voice trembled with the fragile patience of an old woman who had lost too much. Then she turned and left, leaving Amara alone with the echoes. For a long time, Amara stood frozen. The ticking of a wall clock became deafening. Then, as if drawn by something unseen, her eyes landed on the drawer beneath the desk. A small corner of a folded paper peeked out, old, yellowed, and creased. She pulled it open gently. On the front was her name, Amara, written in Adana's unmistakable handwriting. The same slanted loops, the same careful strokes that always leaned slightly to the right. Her heartbeat quickened. Her fingers trembled. For a moment, she almost put it back. She wasn't ready, but some quiet force, maybe guilt, maybe longing, made her unfold it. "My dearest Amara, I know you hate me. Maybe you always will. But please know, that night wasn't betrayal. Tunda kissed me, not the other way. I went to warn him that you were planning to surprise him. He told me he loved me instead, and I slapped him. But you walked in at the worst moment. I never explained because you wouldn't let me speak. You left before I could breathe a word, and after that, your silence was a punishment I thought I deserved. I lived 10 years praying you'd forgive me. I named my daughter after you, Amara Jr. She's 9 now. I told her about her strong, beautiful aunt in Abuja who designs homes and hearts. She always says she wants to meet you. If you ever find this, please, meet her. She deserves to know her mother's other half. I love you always. Adana. For a long time, Amara stared at the letter, the words swimming before her eyes. The room spun, her knees weakened, and she collapsed to the floor, clutching the paper to her chest. A strangled cry escaped her lips, the first real sound she had made in years that wasn't business talk or polite laughter. God, oh God, Adana! Tears came in torrents, hot, blinding, and endless. 10 years of buried pain broke free, every suppressed emotion clawing to the surface. Sobs filled the room, echoing off the walls, making the air itself mourn. She saw flashes, moments she had buried deep. Adana laughing as they braided each other's hair before school. Adana defending her from bullies in secondary school. Adana sitting beside her in the hospital when their father died, whispering, "We'll survive this together." And then, the memory that shattered it all, that night, the soft veranda light, the sight of Tunde's hand on Adana's waist, the shock, the disgust. Adana's tearful voice saying, "Please, Amara, it's not what it looks like." But Amara hadn't listened. Pride had screamed louder than love. Now she realized she had sentenced her sister to a decade of pain based on a single misunderstood moment. She pressed the letter to her lips, sobbing harder. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her reflection in the mirror watched her, identical to the one she once hated. But now that reflection looked different, hollowed by grief, stripped of anger. She whispered to the mirror, "You were the better half, Adana. You always were." That night Amara couldn't sleep. She lay in her childhood bed, the same one they had once shared. The ceiling fan spun lazily above, stirring old memories. Each creak in the house sounded like Adana's footsteps. At one point, she thought she heard soft humming, the lullaby Adana used to sing when she couldn't sleep. Her breath caught. She sat up, clutching the letter again, reading it under the faint moonlight. Her eyes lingered on one line. Meet her. She deserves to know her mother's other half. She turned the paper over and for the first time noticed something else scribbled faintly at the bottom, barely visible. "If you find this, Mama will know where she lives." Amara gasped softly. The realization hit. Her sister's daughter was alive, somewhere in Ibadan, 9 years old, named after her, Amara Jr. The thought tore at her heart. A child who had been growing up without her mother, and Amara, in all her bitterness, hadn't even known she existed. She rose from the bed, pacing the room, her heart pounding with urgency. But then came the guilt, the same heavy stone pressing against her ribs. What right did she have now to walk into that child's life after a decade of silence, to claim the title of aunt after denying her twin's existence for years? She sank back onto the chair, shaking her head. Yet the image of a 9-year-old girl, Adana's eyes, her laughter, wouldn't leave her mind. By morning, Amara's eyes were swollen. The letter lay open on the nightstand, stained with tears. Mama Okafor entered quietly, carrying a tray of tea. She saw the paper, and for a long moment just stood there. Then she sighed. "So, you found it?" Amara nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "She had a daughter, Mama." "Yes," Mama said softly, setting the tray down. "I didn't tell you. I didn't want you to harden your heart more than you already had. Adana begged me not to. She said when the time was right, you would come." Tears welled in Amara's eyes again. "And now, she's gone." "I waited too long." Mama sat beside her, taking her hand, the same way she used to when Amara was little girl afraid of thunderstorms. It's never too late to love what remains. Amara looked down at the letter again, her twin's handwriting blurred through the tears. The weight of those words was unbearable. All these years she had believed she was the victim, betrayed, wronged, justified in her silence. But now she saw the truth. She had been both victim and villain. She had lost not just her sister, but 10 years of peace. 10 years she could never reclaim. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the mango trees, Amara packed her bags quietly. She placed the letter carefully in her purse, as if it were the last fragile thread connecting her to the past. Before leaving, she turned back one last time to look at Adana's room. The rose lotion scent still hung in the air. The sunlight filtered through the curtain, dust particles dancing like tiny spirits, and in the center of the desk sat the old photograph, the two of them smiling hand in hand. She walked to it slowly, touched her sister's image, and whispered, "Wait for me, Adana. I'll find her. I'll make it right." Then she turned off the light, shutting the door gently, not as an ending, but as a promise. That night, as the car drove her toward Ibadan, Amara stared out of the window at the dark highway, the same one that had claimed her sister's life. The wind whispered through the trees like a voice she almost recognized. And for a fleeting moment, she thought she saw Adana sitting beside her in the reflection of the glass, smiling softly, as if saying, "Go on, my twin." "It's your turn to love now." Amara closed her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. For the first time in a decade, her heart didn't feel hollow. It felt heavy, but alive, because sometimes redemption doesn't come through forgiveness from others. It comes when we finally forgive ourselves. The rain began just as Amara reached the outskirts of Ibadan. It wasn't the kind of rain that came gently. It was heavy, relentless, the kind that blurred the world into watercolor. She could barely see the road through her tears and the water streaming across the windshield, but she didn't slow down. She couldn't, not today. Her fingers clenched the steering wheel as though it could keep her from falling apart. Every kilometer felt like a confession. Each turn of the tires whispered, "You waited too long." The wipers beat back the rain in rhythm with her heartbeat. Adana is gone. But somewhere ahead, a little girl, her little girl, waited. By the time she arrived, the sky was the color of bruised steel. The neighborhood was quiet. Narrow streets lined with modest houses painted in faded shades of blue and brown. Flowers drooped under the weight of the rain. Mama Okafor had given her the address, written neatly on the back of Adana's letter. Amara parked in front of a small bungalow with a rusted gate and peeling paint. It was humble, but there was something gentle about it, the kind of place where laughter might still live. She turned off the engine, sat in silence for a moment, then exhaled shakily. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. But her hands wouldn't stop trembling. For years she had faced boardrooms, clients, critics, and never flinched. Yet now, standing before this small house, she felt like a child again, fragile, terrified of ghosts. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the car and walked toward the porch. The rain had softened to a drizzle, tapping lightly against the roof like fingertips. She knocked once, then again. Moments later, the door creaked open, and there, standing barefoot, holding a small towel in her hands, was a little girl. Amara froze. Her heart stopped. The child had the same wide brown eyes, the same dimple on the left cheek that appeared when she half smiled. Adana's dimple. For a second, Amara forgot to breathe. It was like looking through time. The girl tilted her head slightly, studying her. "Auntie Amara?" she asked softly. The voice was delicate, uncertain, but so full of warmth that Amara's defenses shattered completely. She fell to her knees right there at the doorway, sobbing uncontrollably. "Yes," she choked out, reaching for her. "Yes, baby, it's me." The little girl hesitated for a moment, then smiled and wrapped her small arms around Amara's neck. It was a simple gesture, but it broke something open inside her. All the pride, the guilt, the years of silence dissolved into that single embrace. She held her tightly, her tears falling into the child's hair. "I'm so sorry. I should have come sooner." The girl didn't ask why. She didn't judge. She just held on as if she had been waiting for this moment all her life. Inside, the house was warm and quiet. The faint scent of rose lotion hung in the air, the same scent from Adana's room. On the walls were framed photos. Adana smiling in a teacher's uniform, Adana with a group of children at school, Adana holding a newborn wrapped in pink cloth. In each photo, her smile carried a soft sadness, like a woman who had learned to live with loss. But one photo made Amara stop. It was a picture of her from 10 years ago, her graduation portrait. She had given that photo to Adana before they quarreled, and yet here it was, framed, polished, well kept. Her throat tightened. "She kept this?" The girl nodded. "Mama said you were the strongest person she knew." Amara covered her mouth, her tears returning. She turned away, staring at the wall to keep from collapsing again. Everywhere she looked there were reminders, drawings taped to the fridge labeled "For Aunt Amara," a birthday card written in a child's handwriting that said, "I hope to meet you one day." Her twin had never stopped loving her, even in silence, even while Amara had chosen hate. Later, when the rain had stopped, the girl, Amara Jr., led her to the small bedroom she shared with her mother. The bed was neatly made. On the dresser sat a picture of Adana holding her daughter, her eyes full of that familiar light, calm, patient, endless. Amara sat on the edge of the bed, running her fingers over the blanket. "She loved you so much," she whispered. The little girl smiled. "She told me stories about you. She said you two were like mirrors, the same outside but different inside. She said you'd come one day." Those words hit Amara like lightning. She said you'd come one day. Adana had believed, right until the end, that forgiveness would find its way home. Amara took the child's hands gently in hers. Did she ever talk about what happened between us?" Amara Jr. nodded slowly. "She said grown-ups sometimes get lost in their hearts, but love can still find them." It was such an innocent, profound thing to say that Amara could only stare at her, her eyes brimming again. She pulled her close, whispering, "You sound just like her." That night, Amara stayed in the house. She couldn't bear to leave. The silence no longer frightened her. It comforted her, because it wasn't empty anymore. While the girl slept, Amara wandered the living room, touching the edges of the memories Adana had left behind, books, little trinkets, lesson notes. On the table sat another letter, unfinished, its ink smudged. It read, "Dear Amara, if tomorrow never comes, please don't remember me for the mistake you thought I made. Remember me for the way we laughed under the mango tree, for the songs we sang, for how much I loved you, even when you couldn't love me back." Amara pressed the paper to her chest, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. She whispered into the darkness, "I remember Adana. I remember everything." Days turned into weeks. Amara began returning to Ibadan more often, each visit peeling back another layer of her grief. At first, it was awkward. She didn't know how to be an aunt, how to fill the gap Adana had left. But Amara Jr. made it easy. She was bright, curious, talkative, and she had her mother's spirit. They cooked together, drew together. One day, the girl even asked if Amara could braid her hair like Mommy used to. As she ran the comb through the child's thick hair, Amara's eyes filled again. Every brushstroke felt like an apology, every strand like a promise. "You have her hair," Amara said softly. The girl smiled at her reflection in the mirror. "Mommy said we look like you." Amara paused. Her gaze caught on the mirror before them. For a moment, it was as if Adana stood there too, smiling back through the reflection. Her heart swelled with warmth and ache all at once. Months later, when she finalized the paperwork to take custody of her niece, the social worker asked, "Do you understand the responsibility this carries?" Amara simply nodded. "She's family. She's all I have left of my sister, and in truth, she was all she needed." Life slowly found rhythm again. The house that had once echoed with silence now pulsed with laughter and little footsteps. For the first time in a decade, Amara didn't dread mornings. She looked forward to them. Everywhere she went, people said she looked younger, lighter. They didn't know why. How could they? They couldn't see that she was finally sharing her soul again with the one person who reminded her what love meant. One quiet evening, as sunset spilled gold across the sky, Amara Jr. brought her a drawing. It showed 3 figures. 2 women holding hands with a little girl between them. Above them, written in uneven handwriting, were the words, "My mom, my auntie, and me." Amara felt her chest tighten painfully. She looked at the picture, then at the child, smiling proudly. "It's us," the girl said. "Mommy's still with us, right?" Amara knelt beside her, holding her close. "Yes, baby." "She's right here," she said, pressing her hand against the girl's heart. "Every time you smile, every time you laugh, she's smiling too." The little girl giggled, wrapping her arms around Amara's neck. "Then we'll keep smiling forever." That night, after tucking her niece into bed, Amara stood before the mirror again. Her reflection stared back, older, softer, no longer haunted. For the first time, she didn't see guilt. She saw healing. She whispered to the mirror, "You were right, Adana. Love found me." And as she said it, a gentle breeze slipped through the open window, brushing her cheek like a kiss. She smiled through her tears, because forgiveness hadn't come through words. It had come through legacy, through the living echo of her twins' love, through a little girl who carried her mother's laughter and her aunt's redemption. The next morning, the house was filled with sunlight. Birds sang outside the window. Amara stood by the kitchen counter making breakfast while the girl hummed a tune, the same lullaby Adana used to sing. Amara closed her eyes for a moment, letting the melody wash over her. And in that golden silence, she felt it. Not sorrow, not emptiness, but peace. The kind of peace that comes only when you finally stop running from the mirror and start loving the reflection again. In her office one night, Amara places the folded letter in a glass frame on her desk. She whispers, "You were right, Adana. Blood never lies." As lightning flashes outside, her reflection in the window merges with her sister's in her mind. two faces finally at peace.